This is our fourth lecture of Unit 1, and we're going to get more familiar with the night sky and hopefully get you to a spot to where you could bounce around in the evening and actually identify some of those glowing dots in the sky. So we're going to briefly review the last lecture, primarily finding Polaris and using the Big Dipper as a jumping off point. And again, I hope that you can kind of get familiar with the evening sky and take some of this knowledge into the night and look around, see if you can see some of these celestial bodies. And we should also have a quick review that the stars that we're looking at, they're still there. Keep in mind that it's not the stars that are moving, it's us, the Earth, as we rotate and revolve. And they're all out during the day. A question that pops up often is, well, that can't be. I don't see them. Well, you do. You see one star, the sun, and it's kind of the ultimate source of light pollution. And then a very brief intro to the celestial sphere, and we're going to spend the next lecture looking at just that. So away we go. Here, this photo pic, stole it from your book, should look kind of familiar. And, we said that if you can look around throughout the evening and locate the Big Dipper, which is actually part of a larger asterism. That term asterism should mean something to you now. We can use that instead of constellation. But the asterism's technical name is Ursa Major, which is Ursa is Latin for bear and major's big. But we often refer to it as the Big Dipper because these stars here that make up this kind of large ladle dipper spoon are a lot easier to see. And to be honest with you, my opinion, when we start to say that, hey, these are all the stars that make up the bear, the bear's kind of got like a long stretched out tail and it's a little wonky looking. So we'll just go with Big Dipper for now. And we said that these front stars are often referred to as the pointer stars, and that's because they point. And they point to Polaris, the pole star. Polaris is the pole star. It's often referred to as the North Star. And like the name suggests, it faces north. It's located above the Earth's axis. So as we rotate throughout the evening, Polaris doesn't change its apparent direction. And it used to be fantastic. Well, still is, but just not necessarily as important with GPS and stuff for navigation and things. It still points to the north. We'll see in later lectures, though, as we go through this wobble of the Earth over this 26,000 year pattern, Polaris won't always be our pole star, but it's really just kind of random luck that it's situated above the Earth's axis. So it's also not the brightest star. That's a common misconception. Polaris, the North Star, doesn't even crack the top 20 list. Once you've gone from Big Dipper, pointer stars, to Polaris, you're now in the tail of Ursa Minor, or the Little Bear, often referred to as the Little Dipper. And one thing I will say is the Little Dipper, I think, is more difficult to find than the Big Dipper. The stars are a bit dimmer. And if you do find the Big Dipper, see how this is kind of like getting poured into from the Little Dipper. And, as we make our way throughout the evening and these kind of circle around Polaris or the pole star, they're circumpolar. But it's like the Little Dipper is always pouring into the Big Dipper, or if the Big Dipper happens to be positioned above the Little Dipper, it's pouring into the Little. So that's sometimes an easier way to find it. If you go back to the Big Dipper, there's a cutesy little saying called arc to Arcturus and speed on to Spica. So if you see like kind of the arc in the handle of the Big Dipper, if you just continue to arc on and you kind of make sort of like a bowed shape or a rainbow shape like this, you'll find Arcturus, and it's a large red star. We'll get into the colors with stars later, but for now it's a cooler star. But if it's real big, it can actually be pretty bright. This is something that you can locate fairly easily. And this little kite shape here, not booties, it's Boötes, but this little diamond here makes up Boötes. But then we can go from Arcturus down to Spica. And that's a bright star that sits in the back end here of Virgo. Some of you may have birth sign Virgo, or perhaps you have the birth sign Leo. We'll get into all of those in due time, but today's not that day. Rather than overwhelming you with background stories here, let's just kind of think, all right, if I find the Big Dipper, got the pointer stars, they point to Polaris. There's the Little Dipper, it's in that handle. And then if I go back to the Big Dipper, I can arc to Arcturus, be a part of Boötes, and then speed on to Spica, and this little kind of wishbone Y shape here is in Virgo. So there you go. You got one spot you can find, the Big Dipper, and with a little bit of knowledge, you can kind of bounce around. And you could go back to the Big Dipper. And if you kind of think, okay, well, if the Big Dipper were to just kind of smash down, it would sort of bash Leo, the lion, on the head. And, again, I get that this isn't the way that I would sketch out a lion, and I'm not much of an artist, but you got to remember, the ancients, when they looked up in the sky, they had to tell tales to pass the time, and this was not necessarily the 4K vision that we're used to, but this little guy here is Leo the lion. So back to the Big Dipper, right? I mean, that's a great jumping off point for Polaris and the Little Dipper and Boötes and Arcturus and Virgo and Spica and now Leo. And if you follow these back stars, they also point. Usually when we say pointer stars, though, we're referring to the pointer, the front ones pointing to Polaris. But these back stars, they can bash onto Regulus, which is a part of Leo, and that's a nice bright star that we'll discuss later as well. Here is a word from the DNR, just kind of walking you through the night sky.
Well, let's start with the Big Dipper. Where was the Big Dipper? Up there. There we go, right there. We are going to start. We have the 4 points of the pot. 1, 2, 3, 4. We then have the handle. Here's the handle. And there's our Big Dipper. Take the last 2 stars. We're going to go 5 times that distance to find the North Star. There's the North Star. Is it the brightest one?
No.
No, not very bright. North Star, Polaris, makes up the Little Dipper. The Little Dipper, the handle is crooked. So it comes up, and there's the pot. It always looks like one dipper is pouring into the other one. All the stars will appear to circle Polaris. So through the course of the night, these stars are going to go this way, around Polaris. Go back to the Big Dipper. Notice that the Big Dipper becomes a great sight. If you can find that, you can find a lot of other constellations. I'm going to take the handle of the Big Dipper, and I'm going to follow a real simple saying. Follow the arc to Arcturus. The Arcturus is the bright star right there. Arcturus is part of a constellation called Boötes. Boötes is the herdsman. And Boötes, let's see here, he comes up like this. Next to the Little Dipper, we can jump over to the giant W in the sky. Queen Cassiopeia. One more circumpolar constellation. He has to see Draco the dragon. If you can find the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, Draco cuts right between them. What I look for is I'm going to look straight up and look for 4 stars that make a kite. Those are the eyeballs. Draco comes down, up, and around right through it. All of these constellations can be seen any night of the year.
Check it out. Good stuff, right? So again, you're using the Big Dipper as a jumping off point. You can locate quite a few neat things in the sky. So there are winter constellations as well, and like the name suggests, they're visible during the prime hours in the winter time, but you'll still be able to sneak in some views even in the summer. And the winter triangle, like the name suggests, it's a triangle. 3 stars, like there's not really a whole lot of straight lines in the night sky when you're looking up at stars, but these 3 stars here that make up the belt of Orion, the hunter, they are great for locating and bouncing around a bit as well. So if you can find these three stars of Orion's belt, which again are fairly bright, fairly easy to locate, we'll make a star finder where you can actually locate this and you know what time and direction to look. But you can follow that down to Sirius. And Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky as viewed from Earth. Seriously. Sirius is in this little asterism here, or group of stars, called Canis Major. Remember, major means big, and Canis, like a canine, dog. So this is the big dog, and it is going to be Orion's hunting dog. And in Canis Major is Sirius, again, the brightest star in the night sky as viewed from Earth. So you can take Orion's belt, and we find that nice because it's got those three stars that are pretty darn bright and pretty darn straight. You can bounce down to Sirius. Baboom, we go back up to the belt, and you can follow it up, and you can locate Betelgeuse, which is a super red giant. And like the name suggests, it's very, very large and red, and it does have a reddish tinge to it. A lot of times people will erroneously think it's Mars, because Mars is the red planet. It's got a reddish tinge as well, but it is not. Betelgeuse, you can follow it off to Procyon, and this little two-star grouping here is Canis Minor, or the little hunting dog. And Canis Major, where Procyon's visible. The second one's pretty hard to see. You could then follow that down if you'd like to Sirius, and from Betelgeuse to Procyon to Sirius, that makes up that winter triangle. You can also, if you find Procyon, there's Canis Minor. Canis Major is Sirius. And then, those three stars of Orion's belt up is Betelgeuse. Fun one to say. If you take Betelgeuse and you follow it off in the other direction, you run into Aldebaran, and that is the bright red eye of Taurus the bull. And there's this little V shape here that makes up Taurus's head, the head of the bull, and the red eye is supposed to be because he's angry. And we don't really see it here in this pic from the text, but he's supposed to be holding up a club, and he's got a shield and doing some battle against Taurus the bull. And if you take Aldebaran and follow it up, you'll run into these two lines that are supposed to be the twins, Gemini, and Pollux and Castor are stars that are pretty visible. So I know that's a lot of odd names to toss at you, and maybe you've never seen or heard any of this before. I certainly don't expect it to all stick the first time you're exposed to it. I know it didn't with me, but it's like anything. If you got a little bit of interest in it and you kind of bounce around a bit, and maybe you just start off with like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take the first step and try to find Orion's belt and follow it down to Sirius. And then if you get out in the night sky and you did that and you thought that was of interest, maybe add a little bit like Betelgeuse or over to Procyon. Again, it's not necessarily like a one and done as you're getting familiar with the night sky. And as mentioned before, unfortunately we've got some issues with light pollution in southeastern Michigan, so some of these little rascals are relatively obscure. So, summer, winter, obviously different seasons. Summer constellations or summer stars and winter stars. What gives? Well, keep in mind that the Earth is rotating and the Earth is revolving. And we'll get a lot more in detail with our revolution and our rotation later. But just that's kind of a quick little intro to some of the specifics. We got the sun in the center here. And then if you notice these dates, as they go around, here's July to August, September, October. Okay, so this is basically a map. I mean, a calendar is really a map. It's telling you where you're at in space. So when I say June 22nd, or, down the road, June 21st, depending on what year we're in, or the summer solstice, it's, yes, a time on a calendar, but it's also a location in space. So let's just use this June 21st right here. If I'm rotating on Earth, or we're rotating on Earth, and we're facing the sun, what do we experience? If you're facing the sun, you can see the sun, you're experiencing daytime. And if you're not, and you're facing off towards this direction, you're experiencing nighttime. So why can't I see Taurus and Gemini, oops, goodness gracious, sorry about that, Gemini and these in the summer months? Well, because they're out during the day. They're still there, but remember, the sun's like the ultimate source of light pollution in a way. It's like wiping out all the other stars. But in June, at nighttime, I can see in the night sky Capricorn, Sagittarius, and Scorpio. So as we make our way around, then say 6 months later, right, from June to December, looky, looky. Now in the nighttime, I'm facing in this direction, and I can see those stars. And during the daytime, I'm facing off in this direction, and they get washed out during the night. Or excuse me, during the daytime, because the sun is facing towards us, or we're facing towards the sun is maybe a better way of saying that. And then this trip progresses. And when we get into calendars and time, we'll look a lot more at this, but I think it's something you should kind of know. And here's one last fun thing. September 21st, that's my birthday. Well, that's not really the one fun thing I want you to know, but so here is my birthday. And I'm born on what's referred to as the cusp. So technically, I'm like a Virgo, but I'm kind of like a Virgo Libra. And look at this. So here is Virgo. So I would have thought prior to learning this, oh, okay, if I'm born in September, September 21st, and my birth sign is a Virgo, I should be able to see that at night on my birthday. No, no. These are actually referred to as your sun signs or your birth sign. So if I get up early on the day of my birthday and I watch the sun rise, it would rise into what my birth sign is. So you're out of luck if you go out at your birthday night and expect to see the constellation that's your zodiac sign. Like I said, again, kind of a lot to throw at you there. So we'll go have a chunk where we just talk about that. But I do want you to get the basics of like, all right, we're on basically spaceship Earth. And as we move around, sometimes we can't see some things because they're out during the day and the sun washes them out. And given 6 months and we change our location, our view of space is different. Pretty nifty. So, Sirius, right? How the heck do we find Sirius? What's so special about the dog star? Well, Sirius is, again, the brightest star in the night sky, and it's often referred to as the dog star because it's in Canis Major, or this group of big dog. So, once you can find Orion's belt, which, I wouldn't expect to find the stars all dotted in for you here, but these are pretty easy to find. I mean, they're relatively bright is what I mean by that. So if you follow that down, you run into Sirius. Notice here, the foot of Orion. Rigel, that's a really bright, hot star as well, so that's pretty easy to see. Here in the shoulder, we see Betelgeuse, and notice it's got that reddish tinge. If we follow that up, we run into Aldebaran, and this little V shape here, that is the head of Taurus the bull, and the bull's angry because it's battling Orion with its raised club and his bow and shield, and the angry bull is doing some battle there. So if you go from Aldebaran, and then you've got Betelgeuse. You can kind of bounce around a bit. We've got Castor that's up here. And, again, you find one thing in the night sky, which by that one thing, I mean, Orion's belt. Maybe that's where you start. And, it's like, oh, okay, I found Orion's belt. And then maybe you're kind of think about Betelgeuse or following it down to Sirius or maybe up to Aldebaran. It's a, step-by-step process with like everything, right? A little more practice, you get a little bit better. So it's easier to find from December to March because it's high in the sky and the good viewing hours, but it'll still make appearances in the summer. It's just going to be a little lower in the sky, or we'll go through those times later. I don't want to get into the times and locations too much just yet, but I do think you should know Sirius, or the dog star. It's the brightest star in our night sky as viewed from Earth. In my truck.
Hello, I'm
Oops,
Ross
sorry about that. I mixed up my slides here. We got a little video here just to review this part, and then another word about Sirius, the dog star.
Hello, I'm Ross Exton, and today we've come to the planetarium to show you how to track down the constellation of Orion. He's easiest to find by looking in a southerly direction for his famous belt, 3 stars close together in a straight line. And according to the Greek legend, Orion was a mighty hunter, so he was very strong, but not that smart, which is why his head is this collection of dim stars. He has 2 strong shoulders, Betelgeuse, meaning armpit of the giant, which holds a club above his head, and Bellatrix, meaning warrior, which holds a bearskin. He also has 2 legs, Rigel and Scythe.
From Orion's belt, we can draw a line down to the left to find the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius. If we go up to the right, we come to Aldebaran, the red eye of Taurus the Bull. If you look beneath Orion's belt, you might be able to see a faint fuzzy blob. This is the Orion Nebula. By using a pair of binoculars from a dark sky site, you will get to view something like this. Nebulae are vast clouds of gas and dust, and some of these are star-forming regions. The Orion Nebula contains around 700 stars, surrounded by glowing pink hydrogen gas. When enough of this material is drawn together by gravity, it will collapse down and form a new star. These stars are very young, only a few million years old. This might sound like an extremely long time to me and you, but in star terms, they are only babies. As a young star begins nuclear fusion, converting hydrogen into helium, powerful telescopes may be able to reveal a rapidly spinning disk of gas and dust that surrounds the star, called a protoplanetary disk. These are solar systems forming as material gathers to make planets. This is how our solar system would have formed about 4.5 billion years ago. So best of luck with your stargazing. If you'd like any more information on the constellations and other amazing objects that you can find in the night sky, then why not join us in the planetarium or download the latest free night sky guide.
All right, so a decent guide if you're interested in downloading it, and there's a word that means armpit of the giant. That's awesome, and it's Beetlejuice. But Sirius, right? I said it was called the dog star. In my vehicle, I've got a Sirius XM radio, and that's their little logo. See how they got the little star, and it's the dog's eye of a dog, the dog star, Sirius, satellites, it's up in space. It's clever, right? I'm told that in the old Harry Potter movies, there's a gentleman, Sirius Black, or something to that effect, and it turns into a dog. Also not a coincidence, right? These people were playing off neat things in the night sky. So there is a summer triangle. I get the viewing hours are often better in summer. You know what I mean? Like you've got basically you're staying out later and it's nicer weather and it's easier to get out. But I think the winter stuff, the Orion and all that, is a little bit more interesting to check out. But like the name suggests, the summer triangle is out in the summer, and it makes a triangle of 3 stars: Altair, Vega, and Deneb. The stories again aren't quite as interesting as Orion battling a big bull that's angry with his dogs, but we'll walk through all these where we know the times of night and the directions to look and the time of year to best see them. This was just kind of an intro into the night sky. So, like I said before, this is going to be a very brief intro to the celestial sphere. This gentleman's holding one up as these students look up in awe. But the celestial sphere, it's like a three-dimensional sky map. And it's got coordinates that are pretty similar to latitude and longitude, if you're familiar how those work on a globe. If not, we're going to go through that as well. But it's got this, what's referred to as right ascension and declination, and that's kind of the equivalent of latitude and longitude. In the center there, that blue circle or sphere is Earth. And then there's like this imaginary shell around Earth. You can see he's got that like kind of plastic clear dome. And there's all these little dots on there. Those represent stars. And you know how large that dot is or how small is correlated to brightness. So basically, I don't expect you to be able to navigate this from one picture here in just a quick little intro. But I want you to at least kind of have the preface for our next lecture of a celestial sphere. It's kind of this 3D sky map, and there's a way that the coordinates work that you can navigate it, and then I think that would be okie dokie as we roll into the next slide. So hopefully you'll learn some stuff. If you've got questions, concerns, comments, as always, please reach out and see me. Hopefully that was interesting, and I would encourage you to take this newfound knowledge into the evening and see what you can see. Until we meet again, be safe.